I wasn't alone. Not anymore. The signs became undeniable. I met her in Lisbon. An old woman with eyes that flickered like blue quartz when she spoke of dreams she couldn't explain. She drew spirals with her fingertips on a napkin and asked, "Does this remind you of something you forgot?" I met him in Cusco, a child of barely 10 who sang in languages no one had taught him. His mother said he often woke in the night, placing stones in symmetrical patterns and whispering to the stars, "Don't go quiet." And I met them in numbers across continents, generations, genders. People who couldn't explain why they wept in ancient ruins or why they avoided cities or why, whenever they saw a satellite image of the asteroid belt, their hearts clenched with an ache they never understood. They were Maldekians. They just hadn't remembered yet. And that's when the dreams returned, this time stronger. The planet shattered. The gate humming. The fragments scattered. And one word repeated, a line. It was not poetic. It was instruction. There was something we had to do. Something urgent. On the equinox, beneath a moonless sky, I returned to the oldest place I knew, the cave in the Urals. This time I wasn't alone. 12 of us. Each had remembered enough. Each had awakened. We stood in a circle, palms on the ground, eyes closed. We hummed, not in melody, but in vibration, sinking slowly to the earth beneath us. The sound was raw, untrained, but it was honest. First, nothing happened. Then the cavern shook. Light began to pour from the cracks in the stone, not blinding, but warm. The air thickened, as if consciousness itself had joined us in the circle. And then, like a breath taken after ages of silence, a great pulse rippled through the ground, up our bones, and out into the night sky. We had aligned. We had recalled the gate. It was not about rebuilding Maldek. That was never the mission. It was about activating Earth. She was the next carrier. A new harmonic was beginning, and as the others wept, or laughed, or collapsed in silence, I stood still, hands trembling, and whispered the final chord that Ariala had shown me. The one never sung before. The one meant to begin again. Above us, the sky shimmered, not in light, but in tone. Instruments no human had ever built were playing in frequencies only souls remembered. Something vast had stirred. Something older than Maldek. Older than stars. I turned to the others and simply said, "We're not here to mourn. We're here to sing her awake." From the outside, I looked like any other human child born in the early decades of your 20th century. Pale skin, brittle bones, eyes that reflected too much. But inside was a cathedral of memory humming with frequencies no one around me could hear. My human parents called me Eli. They thought I was simply introspective, or quiet. But they never knew that every night, I stood by my bedroom window and whispered ancient Maldekian chants to a sky that never answered. In school, I failed at arithmetic but could feel the resonance of each number. I had no interest in sports but could predict the trajectory of any ball by sensing the sound it would make when striking the ground. Teachers said I was strange. Children said worse. I remember the first time I tried to explain where I came from. I was 6. I told another boy that I came from a planet that no longer existed, and that my people once tuned entire mountains into song. He laughed. He called me a liar. He pushed me, and when I didn't fight back, he said I was weak. That night, I dreamt of Maldek. Not a memory, this was something new. In the dream, I was walking through the ruins of one of our harmonic towers. The structure was shattered, twisted, but still glowing from within. And in the center of it stood Ariala, unchanged, Uniged. She looked at me without speaking, and then she placed her hand on her chest and turned it outward, a Maldekian gesture that meant, "You are still chosen." When I woke, I knew what I had to do. Earth was not my prison. It was my task. But the loneliness, the unbearable silence of being the only voice who remembered, it tore at me. I tried to connect. I studied ancient religions, sacred geometry, cymatics, anything that might mirror the harmonics I carried within. I traveled as soon as I could. Egypt, Tibet, the Andes, places where the earth still hummed faintly, where old knowledge hadn't been completely buried beneath steel and screens. I met mystics who spoke in metaphors, shamans who cried when they saw my aura, and children who, for a brief second, looked into my eyes and recognized something familiar and then forgot. But no one remembered Maldek. Not the name, not the sound, not even the sorrow. It was in the caves of the Ural Mountains that I finally heard a trace of it again. Deep inside a crystalline cavern, untouched by foot or drill, I stood in total darkness and began to hum a note from the gate, the same one Ariala sang when she awakened the sphere. The cave responded. The walls trembled. A tone returned to me, pure and uncorrupted. It wasn't an echo. It was memory embedded in matter. I fell to my knees weeping. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel alone. I began to record everything. Not just what I remembered from Maldek, but what I was beginning to uncover here on Earth. Frequencies buried in stone, sacred sites aligned with stellar chords, indigenous songs that matched our lost hymns almost perfectly. The Earth, I realized, was not accidental. It had been chosen, not just as refuge, but as a receiver. We had planted echoes. Maldekians, those of us who made it through, had scattered across time and space, incarnating in different bodies, seeded into different cultures. Each of us carrying fragments of the great harmonic memory. We were here not to escape our past, but to rebuild what was once lost. I was not the only one. I had always believed that the resonant gate was symbolic, one of the sacred myths passed down from the early harmonics age. A chamber, they said, carved into the planet's harmonic fabric itself, built before the rise of cities, even before language took form. It was said to vibrate only in the presence of a soul meant to carry a piece of Maldek forward into distant worlds. That night, as Ariala and I stood before its spiraling entry, carved not by tools but by sound, I realized the myths had undersold the truth. The walls of the chamber weren't made of stone or crystal. They were alive, layers of vibrating light, humming in polyphonic chords that shimmered with colors I had no names for. As we stepped forward, the chamber responded. Our presence shifted its tone. Frequencies adjusted, like a musical instrument preparing for a sacred performance. Ariala released my hand and walked ahead without hesitation. I hesitated. I looked back, not out of fear, but out of mourning. I knew then I would never walk Maldek's surface again. Inside, the chamber pulsed with golden warmth. It was as if the planet itself were breathing through the walls. Ariala stood in the center, where a sphere of transparent light hovered, slowly rotating, filled with a swirling fractal pattern of violet and crimson. She turned to me, her voice not spoken but resonated through every cell in my body. "Ilian," she said, "this is the seed of memory. You must take it." I stepped forward, and the sphere dimmed as I approached, as if it had been waiting for me, not her. I reached out with trembling hands, and the moment my fingers touched it, I collapsed. I did not fall in body, I fell in time. Visions slammed into my mind like tidal waves. I saw Maldek's formation, the birth of the crystalline core, the early people singing the first harmonic cities into being. I saw wars long forgotten, the rise of the guild, the arrogance, the beauty, the sorrow. But most of all, I saw Earth blue, raw, trembling in its own chaos. I saw future lives. I saw myself, again and again, walking among humans in flesh not mine, watching, waiting, remembering. I awoke sometime later, lying in the center of the gate. Ariala was gone. Her imprint, however, remained. A soft hum in the walls, like the final note of a melody never truly ending. I staggered to my feet and looked upward. The ceiling was now open, not physically, but perceptually. I could see stars through solid crystal. A path had opened, a harmonic corridor that led beyond Maldek, beyond time. I didn't need a ship. The gate had chosen me, and then I heard it, the sound I had heard in the beginning but now magnified. Maldek was dying. No, not dying, releasing. The entire planetary frequency was ascending into dissonance. Mountains liquefied into plasma. The twin suns dimmed, as if turning away in grief. The cities, once humming with elegant tones, screamed. I ran. No longer within the physical world, I was now inside the harmonic corridor. a tunnel of sound and light folding through dimensions. My body dematerialized, my identity fractured, but the seed of memory burned in my chest like a star. I felt the grief of an entire species surge through me. Every soul lost, every song erased, anchored inside my being like notes etched into silence. And then darkness. The corridor collapsed behind me. I found myself spiraling, weightless, thoughtless, through a vortex of soundless screams, until something new pulled me. Slower, denser, more physical. I saw Earth before I understood it. Blue oceans, swirling clouds, tectonic chaos. A wild, untuned planet vibrating erratically. Felt primitive, and yet familiar. Then came the pain. Birth is always pain when you carry memory. I screamed my way into a world that had forgotten the stars. I was a child, but not. I was alien, but not. And from the first moment, I remembered too much. My Maldekian eyes were now human, but my soul refused to forget. I remember the sound before the silence. It wasn't a roar, not even a blast, just a deep hum, rising from beneath the crystalline soil of Maldek. Then everything shifted. The light turned from violet to gold, and the towers, those ancient spirals of translucent minerals, shuddered like they were gasping for breath. I dropped the archive crystal I had been tuning, cracked on the floor, flickering once, then darkened forever. That was the first sign the core was failing. I'm not human. My name, at least the one closest to what your language could grasp, was Ilian. I was a keeper of harmonics, one of the few entrusted to tune the resonant fields that kept Maldek in balance. We didn't build with machines. We sang matter into form. Every city, every bridge, every healing chamber was woven from tone and light. We were architects of frequency. Maldek was not a utopia in the way you imagine it. We had hierarchy, disagreements, even pride. But we had evolved past war. We no longer conquered, we harmonized. Energy flowed not through wires but through intent. Our twin suns gave us warmth, but our power came from the core. A vast crystalline lattice at the center of our planet, pulsing with ancient intelligence. But some grew ambitious. The Lattice Guild, once humble stewards, began to extract deeper from the core, seeking untapped geometries. They believed they could unlock a higher octave of creation. The council warned them. The oracles dreamt of fracture. But the guild silenced those voices, cloaked in logic and data. I remained neutral too long. Then came the first quake. I remember standing in the tower of recalibration when the floor beneath us rippled like a disturbed pond. Light fractured. The harmonics wavered. Some structures imploded silently, collapsing inward as if the frequency that held them together had simply vanished. I saw a friend dissolve into particles when the corridor he stood in lost its coherence. I ran, clutching what I could. Crystals, memory disks, maps. I didn't yet understand that this wasn't a structural failure. It was planetary trauma. The core was bleeding. That night I met Ariala. She was unlike anyone I had ever met. Silent, tall, skin that shimmered with the faint glow of blue opal. She worked in the Vault of Echoes, a chamber that held the soul frequencies of the departed. Her role was sacred, to preserve the vibrational essence of every Maldekian who had passed on, so their song would never be forgotten. She told me something I never shared until now. She said, "The core is not failing. It's choosing." "What do you mean?" I asked, startled. She placed a hand on the crystalline wall. A pulse of gold light moved beneath her palm. "It has a memory. It knows betrayal." I didn't sleep that night. I walked the glowing bridges, watched the twin moons rise. Maldek always felt alive, but that night it felt conscious. Heavy, like it was watching us. The next day, the council declared a planetary emergency. Too late. The guild had pierced the lattice heart. What they released was not energy. It was dissonance. The harmonics screamed. People began to fragment, not die, but unravel. Structures turned to liquid light. The sky fractured into hexagonal voids. Time began to skip. And through it all, I held Ariala's hand as we descended into the only chamber left untouched, the resonant gate. And that's where I made the choice I still carry into every lifetime since.